ways that we can be wise, ways that we can prepare for the storms of life. I'm going to share with you 3 of them that are right there in plain view, although many people overlook. The first way that you can prepare for the storms of life is to not just make Jesus first, make him foundation. These 2 people, the wise and the foolish, made different choices as to the foundation that they were going to build their house on. Okay? And you and I both know that foundations matter. I mean, listen, I don't have to be a builder to understand that if I build on something solid, something hard, something firm, something that's not going to shift and move, that's infinitely better than building on something like sand. The second lesson, that is, we need to build before the storm. Not in the middle of the storm. Not just hope to rebuild after the storm. We need to build before the storm. It is so fundamental and basic that we teach it to our children early on. One of my favorite stories as a kid was the 3 Little Pigs. You remember that story, right? First little pig builds his house out of straw. Why? Because it was cheap, quick, and it gave him more time to party. Huh? The second little pig builds his out of sticks. They took a little more time and a little more resource, but he still had plenty of time to party. And then there's the third little pig. He invested a lot of resource and time and effort and energy and labor building a brick house, brick after brick after brick after brick. And then, of course, in the story, the wolf comes, because the wolf comes in every story, y'all. The storm comes into every life. Eventually, the wolf comes, and when he does, of course, the straw's gone like that. The sticks don't last much longer. But the brick house? Oh, it got battered. He huffed and he puffed and he blew as hard as he could, but it stood firm. Not just because it was on a solid foundation, which it was. Not just because it had been built with intentionality, with the storm in mind, it had. But it had been built before the storm ever came. How about the story of Noah and the ark? People thought Noah had lost his mind because he lived in a desert, yet he was building the largest boat the world had ever seen in that day. And it seemed to make no sense whatsoever. That is, until the first rain dropped. And then the next. And then it began to flood a little bit. Then it began to flood a lot. And by the time people realized what was going on and knew Noah had been more wise than they had given him credit, it was too late. Which leads me to the third thing. God doesn't just want your resolutions. He doesn't just want your empty promises. He doesn't want your empty commitment. All he really wants is your resolve to act on his word. Listen, I've told people this before, and I'm not kidding. This is a book of life for life. This isn't just, ancient, dusty old stories about people that are now long gone and irrelevant. This is a word from God which has been preserved through time for the people of God, including you and me, and God gives it as a gift. A word of life for our life. That if we'll take the time not just to know about it or even to read it, but to live into it, then there is grace upon grace. There is real guidance to be found. There is real hope to be experienced. The real challenge of life isn't that we don't always know the right thing to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are moments we don't know the right thing to do. But for the most part, we do know the right thing to do. That isn't the real challenge of life. The real challenge of life is actually doing the right thing in the face of the tempest of temptation, in the face of the storms of life.